Come hang out with me while I make some test tiles. This is only my second time throwing test tiles, so it could get interesting. The idea here is to throw test tiles that can stand up on their own and that have a bit of a rim at the bottom to catch any glaze drips. I usually use small bowls for these tests because they're something I can actually use afterwards, but I'm going to try mixing my own glazes and I don't want to waste a bunch of bowls figuring out the proper specific gravity and dipping time and all of that stuff. These little test tiles are an easy way to do a bunch of tests without having to wax anything. With the bowls, I would need to wax the outside if I'm dipping them to protect the kiln shelves from runs. So these test tiles have their place in the studio for sure. I am accumulating a lot of them though. Maybe I can find a mosaic artist that wants to use them. If you're a mosaic artist in the Fredericton, New Brunswick area, let me know. I might have something for you. Okay, I'm using porcelain for these test tiles, and porcelain is a finicky material, especially when I'm using large amounts. So the centering process, for me anyway, takes a while. I watched a video by Florian Gadsby about centering large amounts of clay. It was really helpful. Definitely go check it out. He uses this technique to help center it a bit before putting water on the clay. I am pretty sure that I am not doing it correctly, but he's an expert and I'm a newbie. Okay, time to dive in and start centering. I'm going to kind of skip over this part for you. There are tons of videos about centering made by people who are much more experienced than I am. If you're looking for tips, definitely go check those out. I will say that this didn't take me as long to center as I thought it would. It took about 7 minutes, which felt like a lifetime, but the video says 7 minutes, which honestly is pretty good for a large chunk of porcelain for me. Once it's centered, the idea is to move it out to the edge of the bat, and you absolutely need to use a bat for these. You'll see why later. I'm flattening it out to a wide disc before I open it up. The tricky thing here is to make sure that you're not catching slip underneath between the bat and the clay as you widen this out. I'm using the fingers on my left hand to help guide the clay downwards as I'm widening it out. What you don't want to get is a mushroom on top and then you push that down onto the bat, because that will trap the slip. The goal is to have the clay move out on the bottom first and then the top follows, if that makes sense. As it's getting wider, though, I need to really lean on the clay to get it to open up. And you can see that I'm kind of scooping out the slip every once in a while. That seems to be working, but as with all things, your mileage may vary. Opening up this much clay does take some strength. Potters, weight training is your friend. Now that I've got a wide pancake here, I'm going to open up the clay, but it's a bit different than throwing a mug or a bowl or most of the things that you throw, because I want to go right down to the bat. I don't want to leave any clay in the middle of this. Essentially, I want to end up with a ring of clay around the outside and nothing on the inside. Again, make sure you keep some downward pressure with your hands as you're opening up to make sure that you're not catching slip underneath. Opening, at least for me, is a really great way to throw my clay off center. I do that a lot. You can see a little wobbling here. I've learned that smooth, even movement is the key to not throwing things off center when you open them. I'm still practicing how to do that, but at least I know the theory, right? Okay, I'm getting pretty close to the edge here, so I'm going to even out the walls to get them ready to pull up. Lost a chunk of clay there. That was the bit that got some slip trapped underneath. That's what happens. It doesn't matter though, because I am realizing that I have way too much clay. I didn't know how much clay I'd need, so I just took a big chunk. You may be wondering how much clay I used, and I would love to tell you that, but I didn't bother weighing it because this isn't a precision piece, so I didn't really think it mattered. I'm cleaning up the inside here a bit. It makes it easier to see what I'm working with. Plus, it's safer to do this now. There's no chance of ruining my nicely pulled test tiles the way I might if I was doing this cleaning up later on. Okay, starting to pull up the walls. I'm pushing in a bit above the bottom because I want to leave some clay at the bottom to make that little ledge width that I showed you earlier. The first pull is as much about evening the walls as it is about pulling them up. I want the test tiles to slant slightly inwards because it helps them stand up. So I'm using my palms here to push in a little bit and get that lean, and using my fingers on the inside to do a bit of a pull here as well. When I'm throwing with porcelain, I try to use slip instead of water as much as I can. It helps to keep the porcelain from getting waterlogged. Like I say, porcelain is finicky. There's not going to be much height on these test tiles, so it's not really as critical, but it is kind of a habit now and a good one to get into. So I'm making a nice solid ledge here. I know I've got way too much clay, so I'm just shaving some off. No big deal. And then clean up the outside edges a bit and clean up the inside some more. Here I'm starting to make that little dip in the ledge. I'm pushing down a little bit before I pull up. It's important to have test tiles for all of your clays as well. I'm just doing porcelain here, but if you work with different kinds of clays, you would want to do this for each one of your clays. If you watch my rose quartz glaze review, you can see how the same glaze looks quite different on different clays. So if you switch clays, even if it seems like the same kind of clay, you're going to want to test that. I've used 2 different red clays from the Pottery Supply House, and they look very similar. One's a little darker than the other, but glazes do very different things on each of those clay bodies. Even though they're both red clays, they both have grog, they're very similar. Now, do I sometimes just throw the glaze on anyway and hope for the best? Of course I do. You've got to keep a bit of adventure in your life. I'm feeling like I'm almost done here. I'm cleaning off the slip, making things nice and smooth. You're going to see that I was wrong, but they look pretty good right now, don't they? Your test tiles to have texture if your work has any texture. You kind of want your test tiles to mimic what you do on your pots, so the data that you get from your test tiles is useful for you. So if you never put texture on your pots, you don't need to worry about this. I'm trying the scoring end of one of my wattle and daub knives. They're great tools. They're made right here in New Brunswick, but I'm not liking this particular application. No worries, we'll just smooth it out. It's a nice thing about clay. You can always keep working it, you can smooth it out, you can redo it. Okay, these test tiles are already too tall and they're too thick. So let's cut some clay off. I'll just do that with the needle tool. I'm experimenting with doing my reclaim daily, right from my splash pan, so we'll just dump the excess in there. I hate reclaim. I think I'm not alone there. I did avoid reclaim all winter, and now I have literally gallons of the stuff that needs to be dealt with. Like giant 5-gallon buckets of reclaim. Processing it after each throwing session sounds like a more sustainable way to deal with it. We'll see. Do you remember what I said about using slip instead of water? Well, at this point, all my water is essentially slip. I don't use a big bucket of water when I'm throwing with porcelain because I'm trying not to use a lot of water. So I just take it right out of the bucket after a while. Okay, wow, I've got a lot of clay here. Let's take some more off. Oops. That's okay, we'll smooth that out. pretty close here. Not so much pulling the walls up at this point as evening them out and making sure that I've got that angle that I want. You want the test tiles to lean in a bit, but not so much that they're going to topple over. You can't really see it, but I've made a channel on the inside as well, so that both the back and the front of the test tiles are going to have a catch for glaze. I think we're there. These are looking pretty good. I'm going to take the rib and make these test tiles nice and smooth and straight. Still paying attention to the evenness of the walls. It's like I'm preparing for an exam or something. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm happy with this. Smooth off the top edge just to finish it off. I used to have a piece of chamois for this, but I think it's in a reclaim bucket. I haven't seen it in months. I may never see it again. I would have to get to the bottom of the reclaim bucket to find it, and that doesn't seem likely to happen anytime soon. Okay, texture. We're gonna try the tip of the knife this time. Yeah, we'll see what that does. The problem with the other end was that it was kind of too narrow, so the tip of the knife should be able to make kind of a wider indent. Looks pretty good. Clean it up just a little bit with the sponge. Nice. Just tidy it up a little bit and make sure that I get them distinct and wide enough so that I'll be able to see when the glaze runs over it what it's doing. This is an oyster shell. I found this on a beach somewhere, probably on the South Shore of Nova Scotia, and I use it sometimes to put texture on the outside of pieces. I like it because it gives a really organic set of lines to the piece. They're not even lines. Depending on how you hold the oyster shell, the lines are a little bit different. Anyway, I do use this a bunch, so it's a good test for how the glaze looks on a little bit of a softer texture than this one that I'm doing with the knife. We are done. And remember how I said I was going to tell you why you need to throw them on a bat? Here it is. Oops. That's okay. We can fix that. No big deal. That's why we like clay. Very forgiving. It's like it never happened. This is why you need to throw these on a bat. You would never be able to get this off of the wheel if it wasn't on a bat. So we're going to take it off, we're going to set it aside and let it dry to leather hard. That is my absolute favorite thing to do in pottery. Just spin the wheel and let the trimmings fly off. It's oddly satisfying. The first step is to get this separated from the bat. I'm using a regular wire, but I've got the ends wrapped around so that it's shorter to help keep a little bit of control. You want to go all the way down to the bottom and spin the wheel slowly while keeping the downward pressure so the wire stays along the bat. You want to carefully pull that out along the same cut. Yeah, it's definitely a bit soft. That's okay, we're going to work with it. It's just test tiles. They can be a bit bendy. I'm using this straight rib to chop the ring up into individual tiles. I've seen people use drywall spatulas with the handles on them. I just happen to have this lying around. Came with a set of ribs, so that's what we're using. They stand up on their own, that's good. This would be much easier if the clay was leather hard. It wouldn't stick to the ribs so much. Oh, look at this cross section. That is a thing of beauty. Look how even that is. You can tidy these up if you want to. I'm not inclined to spend any extra time on test tiles. I save that for my pots. So I'm just going to leave these as is. The main thing is that they have some texture and some smooth areas so that you get a good idea of how the glaze will look on different surfaces. Have it, a vat full of porcelain test tiles ready to dry and then fire. These will hang around the studio for a while. I used one actually in the glaze review I did for the Mako Blue Surf. I've got another couple ready to go in the kiln to test the dipping version of Laguna's Power Turquoise. Thanks for sticking around and making test tiles with me. I would love to know what else you'd like to see thrown on the pottery wheel. So let me know in the comments. And look, everybody already knows this, but liking and subscribing really does help the channel grow. And it's really nice to know that people enjoy the content. So when you see something you like, whether it's my video or someone else's, make sure you subscribe and give them that thumbs up.